So welcome everyone to the Screen Template webinar, or more accurately, Produce Beautiful and Powerful Apps with New Screen Templates. We have a new screen template system in Fliplet, and we're going to be going through that today, how you can make beautiful and powerful apps with it. So today, your speakers are myself, Brett Johnson. I do customer success for Fliplet in North America, and my colleague Joe Gustafsson does customer success for the UK and EU. Okay, so our agenda for today's webinar is what are screen templates? Why should you use screen templates? A live demo of Studio that Joe will go through and show us how to use the various templates. And as I mentioned at the very end, we'll come back for a Q&A. Please just type those questions in chat. So what are screen templates? There's a lot of different options for screen templates. Basically, they're a good way to get you started in an app. Many of you may be familiar with our app templates, which have many, many screens in them. But you may just want a simple app with a couple of screens, or you may want to add one screen to an existing app. So there's a lot of different options available to you. There's currently over 30 different templates, and we're adding more all the time. They're already kind of set up for you to be functional, to be well designed. So it's a really easy way to get started just by dropping it into an app instead of trying to build something yourself. There are 15 different categories to choose from, and there is some overlap. Obviously, popular and other categories are going to have screens that belong in several categories. But mostly these kind of denote a functionality of how you can use the screen, data capture, media screens, lists. We'll go through some of those, and some are only for kind of static content, whereas a lot of the other things are dynamic and based on components in Fliplet. Some just may be text and images. And they are designed with all different devices in mind. As I mentioned, when you add one of these screen templates into your app, it's already going to be designed to look good across mobile, tablet, and web. You can see kind of our hero screen here, which has a nice background image and some text and a button. There's two different types, and they're kind of formatted so that they lay out a little differently across mobile, tablet, and web, but they look good across all of them. Okay, so why should you actually use screen templates? Sometimes you may just want to preview a feature or a component in Fliplet that is new or that you're unfamiliar with. So we have, for example, here the image gallery. This is a really nice way of seeing how the image gallery looks with images already added into it. You don't have to worry about finding images. Or the interactive graphic. You can see we have a floor plan here with markers already built in. So if you drop one of these screens into your app, you'll be able to test the functionality and see if this is the component you want to use, if it makes sense in your app. As we said, it's kind of a contrast to the app templates, which have a whole suite of functionality. This may just be one simple screen that you're going to add into an existing app, or build a really simple app with just a couple of these screen templates. It can also give you a really good idea of how to set up the component. So if it is a component you're not familiar with, you can kind of look at the settings that we've already configured and duplicate that or kind of learn more about the component. And these are going to be really useful as we launch new functions and new components in Fliplet. We do have plans for several more screen templates coming soon in the future. The other nice thing you can do is preview different styles. So as we've mentioned, we've already set these components up to be laid out and look really nice for you. One of the best examples we have are the two onboarding screens. Now these are the same components in Fliplet, but they're obviously designed to look very differently here. They allow different image types and kind of a whole different layout. This one has a background image. This one actually has a GIF that plays in the center. So you can kind of start to understand how to use our layout system and appearance settings to make really dynamic designs, and also again make them responsive across multiple device sizes and types. You can also preview the same component that has different functionality. The list from data source is one of our most common components. You can see it's 5 different kind of styles here. This is the same component. If you dropped it into a screen in your app, you'd basically get an option to choose which one of these you'd use. But it may be difficult to understand what the differences are, so we've built them out into separate screens that you can add each of these. All of these are going to display lists of data from a data source in Fliplet, but they're going to have different options. For example, the news feed has liking and commenting turned on. That's something that, for example, a directory is not going to have at all. So you can kind of get, again, a better understanding of which type of component to use for your specific situation. And then you can also compare components that on the surface may seem the same or similar, but have very different functionality in Fliplet. So the two examples we have here are for messaging, we have chat and notifications. That may not be immediately clear to someone who's not familiar with Fliplet what each of these does. Chat is for a private messaging, either with a one-on-one or in a small group. Notifications are for you, the app builder, to send notifications out to the app users from the Fliplet platform. So being able to just add these in, the chat does require a login component. There is some dependencies as well, but having each of these in will let you kind of preview them and understand what the different benefits are for each one. And then lastly, we can have, as I've mentioned before, really complex layouts. So these are different article layouts that we've created with images, heading, text, and buttons on it. And they're all laid out very differently. Again, they're going to be laid out for mobile, tablet, and web. But this lets you see how you can lay out some static content in really interesting ways. Now, it is important to keep in mind this is fundamentally different than the lists, which are going to display that content for you dynamically from a data source and spreadsheet. If you wanted to have multiple articles, you would have to make a copy of this screen for each article you wanted to have. So this is usually a better idea for a smaller number of items if you only have 3 or 4 articles or screens that are relevant to this style. And then lastly, one of the kind of more advanced features we have are low code screens, and you can see that's a category in the list. These do require just a little bit of tweaking to get how you want it to work, but with them as a screen template, it's very easy to see. In this screen, we actually have a set of instructions for how do you configure this. It's usually a very minimal amount of HTML that needs to be changed. For example, on the Google Maps, you can go to Google and just kind of grab the embed code and kind of paste it in. It's very easy to change, and they're fully functional, so you can, again, understand these features and understand what's possible with Fliplet and make those changes without having to be a coder or understand how to do all those things. Okay, so that's about it for me. We will go over to the live demo with Joe shortly. Joe, did you just want to walk us through your agenda really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Brett. So in a second, we're going to switch over and look at the live demo in the Fliplet Studio. And there's mainly 4 sessions that we're going to run through. And so we're going to run through how you can find the relevant templates and where they sit within the Fliplet Studio. We're going to then look at the different kind of sections of screen templates that we have. So we've got content layouts, we've got functional layouts, which is more kind of component based. And we also have the low code layouts that we're going to look at. Now, I know that some of you guys with us today, you might be at kind of different levels. So just kind of bear in mind, we're going to do the low code ones kind of towards the end, but they're still quite basic. So even if you don't have any coding experience, you'll probably still get a hang of it pretty quickly. And so I'm gonna just swap the screens around so we can look at the demo. And here we go. So just to get started with the demo, I am using one of our blank apps to get started. Now, whenever you're starting a new app from blank, note that you won't have any screens already kind of existing in your screen list. which means that you always kind of have to get started with actually selecting one of our screen templates to begin with. So you can see there's two ways for us to do that, and we'll kind of have the little prompts here telling us that we need to click here to add a screen. We can also click here at any time to add a screen. Now, as this button kind of shows us as well, it's got the kind of two screens here. You can actually add multiple screens at once if you know what it is that you want to add to your app. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to click the button, and that takes us into our screen template kind of layout. So this is what Brett's already kind of showed us, where we've got all of our different categories that I can look through. It starts off with everything, which you can scroll through to see all of the different options that you have. Now, this is quite nice when you just want to browse and maybe see what's available. But if you kind of know what you're looking for, or you know what kind of content you're designing your screen for, it will be even easier for you to just use the kind of pre-built categories that we have up here and select the category that works for you. Now, as we've kind of explained, we're going to look through a few different options of content layouts that you can use. We're then going to look at the functional layouts, and then we'll kind of look at the low code ones. And so if we get started quickly just with the content layouts, as Brett kind of explained, the content layouts is something that you would use if you have static content that you want to display in the app. Now, what we've done is really created a few different variations of them to show you how best you can lay out your content depending on what content that is. So, for example, we can look at the category called content page. We're also in a second going to look at the hero screens that Brett has showed us, and we're also going to be looking at the profile. Now, these are the three main sections where we just have static content that isn't in any way kind of dynamic, and it's just kind of either a copy and paste job to get your content in here, and it's mainly just about how they're kind of looking on the screen. That's kind of how they've been designed. Now, before we kind of go into actually looking at them more in detail, the thing that I would always recommend is before you select which screen layout to go with, always bear in mind what is the purpose of the screen that you're building, and what type of content do you already have. It's a lot easier to select the layout after you kind of have an idea of the content that you have, so you can select the layout that kind of suits the content that you already have at hand. You can obviously then play around with the layout that we built up to kind of make it work with the content that you have, but to make your life as easy as possible, select the template that kind of works for your content. So when it comes to the first list that we see here in the content pages, these are different kinds of article examples. You can see all of them have some kind of image. These two have like a banner image, and here you've got some more kind of circular images, and here you kind of have some in text or inline images. And then they've got different ways of displaying materials and different kind of functionality in terms of buttons to kind of take you somewhere else in the app. Again, what I would just recommend is when you're kind of looking at this, have in mind what content you're designing for, and then select the one that's relevant for you. As Brett also mentioned, we have really designed these layouts to look good across different device types. So when you're looking at them and you're trying to decide which one is the right one for you to go with, you can change the device preview up here and just have a look at what they will look like when you're in tablet and when you're on web. And at the moment, you can see that obviously the screen kind of device preview kind of scales, to look bigger on web. So you might have scrolled down just to see the other two at the bottom here. You can see that this is kind of nicely expanded to look good across all the different device sizes. So that's how you can kind of decide which one you would go for. Now, let's just maybe take a look at the hero screens. Hero screens is really something where, you kind of want to have a background image that is eye-catching, and maybe it's something that you have as an introduction to something where you have a little bit of text, but mainly it's just the background image that's kind of capturing someone's eye. Again, this is all just static content. It's all about just having a background image. These are different designs that if we kind of move across the different device types, you can see that they will look nice across the different devices here. We also have, in terms of the just content layouts, we also have a profile screen. When it comes to profile screens, we have two variations of profile screens. This is what they look like on web. We've got the tablet version and we've got the mobile version. Now, at the moment, because as I mentioned, all of the content screens, they revolve about static content. So if you wanted to create these kind of profile screens, you would have to statically create them for each of the people that you're creating a profile for. So they're not at the moment anything that is dynamic. They're just kind of showing you the possibilities of what you can do with the layouts in the studio. So let's go ahead and maybe add a couple of screens to our initial app, and we can take a look at how we're editing this. So for the content pages, all of them are very similar in terms of how you edit them and how you kind of change them to make them work with your content. What we'll do is we'll just select maybe one of these, and maybe we'll select one of the hero screens. You can see now that I've selected two of them, I can then click up here to either add my new two screens. I can also see which ones I've selected next to each other, so I can be reminded. I can also clear my selection if I want to start over. But I'm pretty happy with this, so let's go ahead and add our two screens. Now that they've been added to my app, I can go ahead and start kind of editing them. Now for content screens, this is pretty simple. If you've edited an app with the Fliplet Studio before, this will make sense to you. If you wanted to replace the image, all you have to do is click on this paintbrush and you can change the image. Now this is using what we call a container. You can see the images here. To personalize it, all you'd have to do is click on the image, select another one. We've got a nice background image of a sea. Click select and it will update. For the rest of the content, this is just static material, so I can directly just type in here, this is my title. And then you can customize it this way. Now, as I've mentioned, it's better to plan your screen around your content than the other way around. However, if you have selected this version of the layout and then you decide that you wanted to maybe change it to another version, what you can do is you can click on the little options here and I can see my screen kind of options. So I can, if I wanted to, rename it. When I'm adding multiple screens, I automatically get a name added for me, but I can change this to anything if I want. I can also reset to screen template. So this means if I've made changes to this template and I want to kind of revert back to what it was originally, I can select reset and I can then just select this layout again. So I can just click here and I can reset my templates. So this is how you can go back a step if you feel like maybe you made a mistake and you want to go back to the previous settings, but you're not really sure what's gone wrong, then you can just reset it to a previous kind of layout. Bear in mind that when you do that, you will lose any potential content that you've already added to your screen. So I had changed the image and I had also changed the title. Now that I've reset the screen to the templates, that will all be gone and you'd have to set that back up again if you wanted to. So that's how you can quickly just edit any of the content screens. They will all work the same way. So we've done this for the article. If we take a quick look at the hero screen, again, if you wanted to change anything on here, the way you customize it is just clicking anywhere where you wanted to change things and then just making edits. If I wanted to change the background image here, for example, I would click probably on this option and then on the paintbrush just to see that I'm getting to the correct component that I want. And then I can click here to change my background image, and maybe I want to use my nice sea image again. You can see this is now updated. So this is how all of the kind of content screens work. If you kind of want more help or inspiration on how kind of you can set up nice background screens and everything like that, then we have done a webinar a few months ago about how to kind of use containers and how to build kind of nice layouts using the kind of layout editor. If you want more information about that, then you can go back and watch that webinar as well. But that's everything really that we need to look at in terms of kind of the content layouts. Now, the biggest section or types of screen templates is really the kind of functional layouts that we have. As Brett has mentioned to us already, one of the main purpose with having lots of different screen templates is really for us to show you the different kinds of capabilities and functionalities that we have with our kind of dynamic components. One of the nice things with the screen templates is going to be for you guys to kind of explore new features that maybe you haven't seen before. And so what we're going to do now is just take a look at some of the more kind of dynamic and functional layouts. So if we kind of look at them maybe at a category by category base, we can start with the charts item. And now you'll probably notice that we have kind of skipped over the blank template. And just before we maybe jump into all of the functional ones, I just want to mention this briefly because you can always start from a blank template if you wanted to. We recommend doing this only if none of the other templates, screen templates, really kind of suit your purpose, then you can start from scratch with a blank one. Otherwise, to kind of get you going as quickly as possible, I'd always recommend using one of the actual kind of templates to get started, just because they will have things like container setup that has padding, that has margin setup, that has kind of nice variations of this is how you kind of style your titles and the rest of the content. So it really kind of gives you a head start starting off with one of the templates. But now if we're going to go back and look at the functional templates, if we start with the charts one, and so some of you might know this, some of you might not, but Fliplet, we have quite a few different chart components. If we select this template and click to create a new screen, you can see if I select only one template, I can actually give it whatever name that I want. So I'm just going to call it charts. The reason I wanted to show you guys this screen specifically is what we have done here is really given you a way to see all of the different types of charts that we have. The really nice thing is that they come populated with some sample data to really give you an idea of this is how you can use them, this is the kind of data that you can use them for, and also how you can style them across different device types. So I'm actually going to quickly move into preview so we can just take a look at it. When it comes to the different charts, we've got a donut chart. You can see we've got lots of different types of data in here, and it also has here like some more information in the ledger. We can scroll down to then see we've got a pie chart, a column chart, and a bar chart. And then finally we have a line chart. Now, this is kind of how you can display them all on one screen, which maybe isn't how you're going to do it, but this is just kind of show you the potential that you can do with different charts. If we also move into the different device kind of previews, we can see what it looks like on tablet. You can see what you could do on web if you wanted to maybe have this on two columns next to each other. This is quite nice if you're having anything that is more kind of comparative and you can use them this way. Another thing that is really great with these kind of functional layouts is we have already pre-configured these charts with some sample data, meaning that you don't have to find the component yourself, drop it on a screen and kind of figure out how to configure it. But actually what we can do is if we click on this, we can already kind of inspect how has this been set up. If we click to actually open up our data source, we can see what type of data are we using to kind of get the chart to look this way. And just by kind of looking at this, it should be a lot kind of easier for you guys to figure out how you can customize it with your own data, which chart to maybe choose depending on the data that you want to display, because there's a best way for different types of data. And that's kind of how you can get started with it. And so I think this is a really good first kind of component or screen template to look at when it comes to the functional layouts, because it really kind of shows you how you can use it. Now, we kind of understand that when it comes to charts, you probably don't want to have a screen with just 6 different charts. The purpose is that you can kind of create the screen and then just delete the things that you don't need anymore. So you can then kind of start from pretty quickly. Now, if we move on and look at some of the other functional layouts, I'm going to go back into adding my screen, and we're now going to look at the data capture category. The data capture category is our kind of form component, is what we call it. This is how you can capture any kind of data from users within the app. So you can use this as this is a simple survey, which is an example where you can, capture some information about ideas and knowledge maybe. You can do this as feedback service if you have, for example, an event running and you want to ask the user maybe for some feedback during the event. You can use one of these kind of forms. The really nice thing about using the template specifically for this is that you get a really good example of how you can structure your form, what types of data capture that you can have, and you can then kind of go and customize it from there. Now, we're actually going to look at one of the data capture forms in a little bit, so I'm not going to show you this one specifically. But we can move on and then look at the next category, which is the integrations. Now, I'm just going to move back into the kind of mobile device so you can see them all at once. But for integrations, this is really how you can get data into your app from other systems or maybe websites. Okay, so we've got an example of how you can get a Twitter feed, how you can get an RSS feed, and also how you can get Google Maps into your app. I'll show you this in a little bit. Some of these we have labeled, as you can see, with a low code label, and some of them have the no code label. Now, for those of you that does have a little bit of coding experience, you will find pretty simple to set up the low code ones. It generally just requires you to open up what we call our developer options and maybe do some HTML changes. We do have, as Brett mentioned, some explanations in here that kind of teaches you how to do it. But we'll take a look at that towards the end to show you how easy it is to actually do that. So this is the kind of integration section. And again, so far the ones that we've been looking at for the functional layouts, they are really been so far the charts, the data capture, and the integrations. We're also going to look at the intro and the logins, and another couple of ones in this specific category. Now, for the intro and the login, as Brett kind of took you through during the presentation, we've got two examples of an intro or an onboarding. Now, we always suggest that you keep some kind of intro and onboarding in all of your apps, because that's just kind of best practice. It's a really nice way to open up the app to give the user a really good first impression. And what we've done here is built up two examples of different types of onboardings with different types of kind of images, as Brett has shown. And what we can actually do is I'll create both of these screens so I can run them through and show them to you. These previews that we kind of see here at the moment, they're just static. So sometimes you might want to create a screen just so you can have a play around with the template and figure out if that's the right one for you to use or not. We're also going to have a look at the login and the sign up. Now, most apps will have some kind of login just so that the app can verify you. It's quite often necessary for various features that are maybe social features or other things where the app just kind of needs to recognize who you are as a user to maybe load relevant content. Also, if you have anything that is a public facing app in the public app store, you might also need users to create their own account, which is why you would need to have the sign up and the login screen. And so what we can actually do in a second is I'm going to show you how, now that we've created both of these screens, how you can set them up and get them working together. So I'm going to create my 4 new screens and we can take a quick look at them. We're going to start with the 2 onboarding screens, just so you can get a hang of kind of how you can create different screens, compare them, and make a decision which one to move forward with. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move into preview just so we can have a play around with them. The first version of the onboarding screen, it has a static background image, and then it's got the kind of information in the middle of the screen. What I can do is then swipe through and have a look at kind of the different key features of my app. This would obviously be customized on an app per app basis, but this is just an example. Now for the second layout, the main difference here is that you'll see in a second is just that we actually have an interactive graphic, which is just a little bit more interesting. And again, the purpose really to show this to you so that you kind of understand you might need to create one of these screens to have a look at them and really play around with them to understand the differences in them. When it comes to these 2 onboarding screens, you would really select the one where you have the correct content for it. So obviously if you don't have an interactive graphic or a GIF, then you just use a static image. The main difference is really the layout. So you can see we've got a bigger image here. We've got the content towards the bottom, which probably means that you can have less of a description on this one rather than the other one. And the image is kind of more at the forefront. I can then also swipe through to see different types of graphics. And again, you can see that there's just less content in this version of the onboarding. So that's the different types that we have. And again, this is how you can decide which one is the right one for you to use. Now if we move on over to the login and the kind of sign up layouts, as I've mentioned, these are very, very often used in apps, and they're very often used in apps in a combination and together. This is also when you can see that we've actually, even when we have created these screens from layouts, we actually have a button from here that should be taking you to a sign up. And if we go to the sign up, you'll also see here a button to take you to the login. Now, the first thing to note is even though we say that these screens can often be used together, they can also be used separately or individually. If that is the case, you can easily just, on the login, for example, if you don't have a public registration, you can just delete the sign up button and it's gone. However, if you do want to create both of them and set them up together, we can quickly run through how that works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the sign up screen and I'm going to go into edit. There's a couple of things that you need to do to get these working in combination. And the first thing I'm going to do is click on the form just to open up my settings. So this is one of our form components, which is the data capture. At the moment, our template just comes with two fields. So we're just capturing the user's email and we're capturing the password. If you wanted to add in more types of data that we're capturing, like for example, most apps will probably also want to get the user's name. So what I'm doing is I'm adding in a new text input field. I am just changing it quickly to call it name. We are making it required because I want everyone to fill in their names when they're signing up. I'm going to click done. And then the main thing to keep in mind here is we need to move into the settings tab and we need to make sure that when this is being saved, we're storing it in one of the Fliplet data sources. So I'm just going to create a new data source and I'm going to call this users. The other really important thing to bear in mind here is when the form is submitted, we need to make sure that we're actually ticking this box to store the data in a data source. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm also going to say that when the form has been submitted, I want the user to be taken back to our login screen. This is how we can kind of connect the two screens together to make sure that the user can go into a nice flow of signing up and then quickly going into logging in with a new account that they've just created. Okay, so I'm going to click Save and Close. And before we can go back into the login screen and configure that, what we're going to do is we're going to we can, if we want to, configure this button, but I'm actually just going to delete it because we don't need it. I'm going to go into preview. And then the way that you would do this is you quickly fill this in. I'm going to add my email really quickly. We're going to set us up with a password and we're going to click submit. We can tell that this is already working because we're automatically taking back to the login screen and we are almost finished with setting up our sign up and a login screen, which using the screen templates, as you can see, only take us about 2 minutes. Now, I'm going back into the edit mode just to configure my login. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that it's using the same data source that we have used for the sign up screen. So in the settings, I'm going to select my user's data source. I'm going to select which field is storing my emails, and I'm going to select which fields are storing my passwords. Now that I've done that, I'm only just going to configure a final setting, which is just to say where should the user go after they're configured or logged in. And just as a sample, we're just going to select our article here. Now we can click Save and Close, and this is actually everything you need to do to configure your whole login and sign up process. As you can see, it's very quick to do using the screen templates. We can now actually try to log in using this new functionality. If I log in here, you can see that this has been successful. So in all, using the screen templates in Fliplet, you can already see how quickly it goes to kind of set up these more advanced flows and system that, you know, without kind of having the screen templates, you'd have to do everything from scratch. So that is our kind of login and sign up. Now, if we go back into our other types of templates, the one thing that we want to look at next is the lists. So as Brett kind of explained, these are just different versions of our list from data source components. If you create a new screen and just drop a new data source, list from data source component on your screen, you will be able to see these different types of templated lists. However, this really kind of explains it more in a contextual level. What we always kind of recommend when you select a new list from data source is, again, just keep in mind the data that you're designing it for. So if you're having a staff directory, we'll recommend going with this type. If you need some kind of horizontal tiles, maybe this is for like a highlighted list of people, then you select this one. For a newsfeed, you'll select this one. It's got some additional features that these two doesn't have, such as commenting. This type of list also has bookmarking, but it doesn't have liking, which also the news items do. We have also the list calendar, which is used quite often in event apps for creating agendas, but you can also use it for creating lists of events. And if we scroll down, we also have two more types or styles of list from data sources, which is a kind of discussion forum. And we also have kind of a list for resources, which just means that you can attach things like PDFs or websites. Now, we're not necessarily going to go in and look too much in details with these ones. The main thing I just want to point out is go in, explore them before you select any of them or decide which one is correct for you. Figure out which functions are actually key for this specific screen that you're building. Do you need bookmarking? Do you need liking? Or do you need commenting? That is kind of how you should decide which of these versions you go with. You can also see they obviously have different types of styles of images being shown here. You just got a smaller thumbnail, whereas the newsfeed kind of means that you have bigger kind of banner-like images where you have maybe more kind of newsworthy items. If we then move on to the media screens, we've got a sample of an image gallery, which is just a way for you to display multiple images in one screen. A nice thing about this is you can allow the user to kind of tap on one of these images to expand them, and then that's quite nice if you wanted to create anything like a gallery feature. For the interactive graphic, you can always drop in just this interactive graphic on your own, but the really nice thing again about using this as a template is that you get some of the sample content set up. You can kind of have a play around with the markers. If we actually go ahead and create this screen, we can take a look at what it looks like. And so we've got a new floor plan screen here, and you can see what it looks like. Again, without you having to make any configurations, you can just have a play around with the different features. So you can see that we can click on the different markers. We can switch floors. So if we've got 2 floors, we can switch floors quite easily. We can also zoom in, zoom out, and everything like that. So again, just using the screen templates to make it really quick and easy for you to explore the different features and what they can do for you. And if you ever decided not to go for one of them, just click on the cogwheel and click delete, and there's no harm done to try it out. Now let's go back into the ad screens because there's not a lot of sections left that we want to look at. For menus, these are just 2 different styles of menu types that you can use. So these are ways to kind of create navigation in your app. So different kinds of main menus with different kind of tiles type features, or this is a kind of bigger tile feature, which you probably would only use if you have fewer items of your menu that you want to highlight. Again, what I would just suggest is kind of click on them, create them, and then select whichever one works best for you. Obviously, creating these kinds of menu styles would mean that you need to have some kind of imagery that you can use for your menu items. Next section we have is the messaging and notifications. So messaging and notifications, they're 2 different kinds of components, but they're ways for you to communicate with your app users. Chat messaging works basically like your WhatsApp app would work. It just means that all of the users in the app can chat with each other, or they can create different group chats. So it's very interactive and it's a great way to kind of create a social app. Notifications is more a way for you as an app builder to communicate with your app users and let them know whenever there's new content in the app, whenever there's an update, you can add that into the notification list, and the app user will be notified whenever there's anything new kind of added in there with a little badge on the icon. And that's everything we have for the kind of functional layout. So that is really kind of the biggest section of templates that we have at the moment. Now, the final thing that we're just going to look at quickly is the low code ones. And so at the moment, we only have 2 low code features, but there's more coming in the near future. But at the moment, we have a way for you to add in a Twitter feed, but also the Google Maps. So what we're going to do at the moment is I'm going to quickly just show you one of them, and we're going to select the Google Maps one. What we're going to do is we're going to create it, and I have a map here that I'm going to add in. And so once this is loaded in here, again, we're in the edit mode, but we're going to switch into preview, and we're just going to see how we can customize this map. So any of our low code features, they do require you to, in somewhat way, open up our developer options and make some changes in the code. If we scroll down on the screen here, we can see there are some instructions to kind of help you along the way. But the way it generally works is our developer options sit here. If we click on this button here, we can see all of the HTML that is kind of building up our screen. We could also, if there was any CSS or any JavaScript, we could also see that, but this template doesn't need that. This template only requires you to make a very small change in the HTML. Now, the way that this works, and we can look at the instructions, the way that this works is what we actually just want to do is once you've gone into Google, you found your embed link, what we need to do is just replace the sample embed link with a new one. So we're quickly going to do that. I've got my sample embed link here, and as I've already read the instructions, I know what I need to do. I'm just going to take this link here and I'm going to replace it. Now, as our instructions say as well, what we want to make sure we do is we want to set the width and the height to 100%. So we're just going to do that, and then we're going to click save and close. So for the width, I'm going to change 100%. For the height, I'm going to change 100%. And then we're going to click save and run. And that is all the changes that you need to do in the code. So that's why this is very much considered a low code feature, because you don't necessarily need to do a lot of it, and you don't really need to understand any HTML. As long as you can follow the instructions and you know how to get an embed link from Google Maps, you will be okay to do this. Now that we've saved this, I'm going to go into preview, and we can see we've changed this link to our kind of London Bridge maps from what it was before. And so that's how all of the low code features will work. It won't necessarily require you to do a lot more or heavier code changes than that. It is mainly just asking you to, at least at some level, be okay to open up the developer options and follow some simple instructions. And I think that's it for the demo today. Now, there's one thing I know I haven't shown you guys already, which is if we click on the add screen section, at the bottom, let's scroll all the way to the bottom. We are currently working on adding in more templates as we go along. If there's anything that you guys are missing, then feel free to click this button here and let us know which templates you would like to see in here. We're more than happy to get your feedback, and obviously we're always trying our best to make sure that the templates are relevant for what you guys are creating, and that they kind of help you create an app as quickly as possible. And that's everything we had for the demo. Now, I think it's back over to Brett to see if we have any questions.
Yep, let me go ahead, share my screen. So yes, if anyone does have questions, please ask them in the chat, the Zoom chat. Please, again, don't turn on your microphones. It looks like so far we only have one question. I guess I can answer it as well. Can I make my own templates? At this time, you can't make your own templates. As Joe showed us, you can request a template from us. But if you make any screen in Fliplet, you can obviously drop in your own components. You can drop in containers to change the layout. You can configure a screen however you want. And it's really easy to just click on the cogwheel next to the screen and either duplicate it in the same app or hit copy to and actually copy it across to other apps in your organization. All right. Any other questions?
Just another quick point about creating your own templates, because at the moment, as Brett mentioned, whilst we don't have the option for you to create your own screen templates, you do have the option of creating your own app templates, which means that if you wanted to take our screen templates, customize them, put your own branding on them, and then maybe create them into a template that you can share with the rest of the organization, then you can do that. We quite often suggest to our users that they can create their own templates that way, and then whenever another user in your organization wants to create a new app, they can use your kind of pre-branded template that has been set up with screens that, you know, is kind of pre-approved in the way that the layout is set up, the design, the look and feel, and maybe also kind of how best to style the content to keep in line with your corporate branding.
All right. Yep. Great. Thanks, Joe. And doesn't look like there's any other questions. So that will do it for us today. Thank you for watching.